So I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes life can just feel a little flat or like you kind of lose passion and desire, whether it's having kids or business troubles or financial troubles or just, I think it just happens to everybody. Honestly, I think it's just a part of life where the day to day things just kind of wear you down and you can just feel really like there's something more. I want something more out of life. I'm just not sure what that is. Or maybe I do know what it is, but I'm not sure how to get there. There's an exercise I'd like to walk you through that can help bring some clarity and focus around this. So if that sounds familiar, if you're feeling a little flat or stuck or just kind of like with life, why don't you grab a chair, grab a cup of coffee or some kind of tasty beverage, and let's chat. So I think most people probably go through these seasons a few times in their life, whether it's from something major or turning a certain age or going through a hard time or just having kids, because that just seems to steal so much life and energy. Like in the early years, at least it did for me, where life's all about the kids. And you can kind of feel like, I want more. And sometimes, especially in the Christian circles, I think there's this struggle around desire. And at least in some of the circles I was in, you almost feel guilty for wanting some things or maybe desiring things, or just that thought of like, is it okay to desire more in life? And I don't just mean stuff. I mean, I think God's probably like, I don't really care if you want a different car or whatever, but as long as you're not getting hung up on some of that stuff. But like, it's okay to desire more out of life and more experiences, more achievements, more things, as long as those things don't own you and take the place of God. I think that's, we don't want to go there, but like, it's okay to have desire. Like, God puts things in our hearts. He's built us to desire. And I think that's okay. So maybe part of this discussion is about reawakening desire and what that might bring up for you. So I don't know, Kristen, if you've had that experience where maybe you've gone through seasons of life where you felt kind of like, I don't know, like I explained earlier in the show.
Yeah. Well, even as you were talking, like two scriptures just came to my mind. The scripture in Proverbs where it says, "A people without a vision will perish." And there have been times in my life where I have felt dead. And I'm a really passionate person. Like, I am a glasses half full kind of girl. Like, what's the best that can happen? Like, it's not even an option that it's not going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, we'll figure out another way. Like, that's just my innate. That's how God made me. Like, that's just how I am. And that's just part of my gifts and my strengths and the things that I'm able to bring to the world as a light. So when I have felt, like you said, just the struggles of life, like the seasons of life, whether again, kids, new jobs, new towns, new things, like death, loss, all of those things, like there have been seasons where I understood what a valley of dry bones was like, because it felt like the inside of me was just dry, quiet, dead, buried, cold. Like, I have felt that. And I have also felt the acids of life come for me and still had some sense of purpose, because I did have a vision. I did sit down and do like some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So in those seasons, it was like, man, this sucks. I feel buried. I feel dead on the inside, but I also know that like the resurrection is coming. So there have been those seasons where I just felt both. I felt both, like life hit me hard, and there was just this anchor, this foundation, because I held on to the vision that I felt like God gave me for X, Y, and Z, for my business, for my family, for my future. And so the scripture, I will have to look it up, but the people without vision perished, right? And then another scripture that came to mind was in Psalm, I think it's 37 or it might be 34. I can't remember. Somewhere over there in Psalm, it says, God will give us the desires of our heart. And I believe on the front end of that, it says, like, when we seek him, he will give us the desires of our heart. And I think that's where we kind of get it twisted, is it's like, I desire different things that maybe God has for me, right? In my life. So when we are connected to God, and we are connected to the vine, like the fruit of that, the desires, the things I want are going to be different. So my vision isn't just my fleshly vision. My vision is like what I truly feel like God made me to do, like that purpose, that passion. And so when you were talking about like wanting more, my mind went there more than it went into, like, of course, there's things that we were talking even before this recording of, like, when I did this work a couple years ago. I'm excited to do it again with you today. But I am now reflecting on how much of that has come to pass. And it just made me take a second to pause and be like, thank you, God. Like Kristen and herself would have never written those things down. Like, I mean, because my own desires are much more selfish than what I wrote down on that paper. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it was like, okay, God, I know you've called me to this. And I know this is what you've made me passionate about. These are the things I desire to be true, big and small. Like, down to my house and what it looked like and down to what I do on a day-to-day basis. Like, I mean, I broke it down, and to just take a second even here and look back on that, it's like he truly is giving me the desires of my heart as I seek him. So those are some scriptures that just as you were talking, like there has been times where it's like, I want more, and it's not more stuff. It's I want more. I want to feel alive inside. And I think we all do. And I think this is why so many of us maybe even do like reckless things or things, like I have a kid who is very,
Hey, stop pointing fingers at me.
I'm not pointing fingers at you, but I
My
know you're going to relate to this. I know
my
you're going to relate to
adrenaline's
this.
my
Like, I
adrenaline
didn't have to
seeking.
say it before you know what I'm about to say. But he does things that like don't make sense to me. I'm like, why did you just do that? Like, that doesn't even make sense. It's reckless. It could be harmful to yourself and people around you. And I think it's because he needs to feel something in this moment, even if it's not a positive thing. So I think there are so many of us that are just walking around asleep. So many of us walking around feeling like the dry valley of bones. And that's who I hope that we get to connect with today and just give them a permission slip to dream again and what it looks like to dream again. And I'm praying that throughout this time, as you're doing this work, you can look back and see the evidence of God this far. So we're not just looking at what we don't have and what we want to be true, but we are looking at the fingerprints of God this far to date. So I'm really excited. I love work like this. And we work with our clients doing things like this. We took our retreaters through this and we're going to again. So like, I love, love, love this work because I think it's important and I understand why people resist it, or because there can be like a lot of, I don't know, like shame or I don't know, sadness maybe. I don't know what word I'm looking for, like where it's like, I want these things, but I'm so far from it. Right. And it's almost like we're scared to even vocalize or write down these desires that we have, even if we feel like they're from God. And so, anyways, I'm stoked. And I'm only drinking water today. I'm not even drinking coffee. And I feel like I'm like starting to get like all this energy. So
Yeah, I'm on, this is my 2nd cup, and there's only, like, 1 sip, maybe 2 sips left, so I'm a little sad. I'm always sad at the end of
you're
the cup
sad.
because
I
I
you're
truly enjoy the flavor of it. Like, I don't drink
mhm,
coffee. For some people,
mhm,
coffee is just caffeine. For me, I truly enjoy the flavor of,
mhm.
like, really good coffee.
It's like an
So,
experience in your mouth. I've
yeah,
never seen you have a cup that has anything on it, I don't think. You always have a
this
plain cup.
yeah, well, it's not plain. The other one I use is from my favorite coffee shop downtown, and it's just it's the when I fill it up, it's the perfect amount. But this one I actually got when you and I were leading that retreat for Rhonda, or well, I
Mhm.
wasn't leading. I was filming. When we were on the
You
retreat
led worship?
for Rhonda. Oh, yeah, I did.
Get it.
Uh, I bought this at one of the places we went to, so it just reminds me of our time in
Uh,
Colorado.
we've gotta go back to Colorado. Anybody listening to this, like, make us go back to Colorado. Say you wanna go to Colorado with us, and we'll make it happen. It was
Sarah,
beautiful.
one of our retreaters this
Yeah.
past retreat, she's in Colorado.
So we're just gonna sign her up to host. Sarah, just give us a call.
And we have another person who's been with us she actually got certified through our YTT program, our 200 hour, and then went through our Next Steps program, Samantha. And
Shout out Samantha.
she's somewhere in Colorado. So like we definitely need to make something happen
Yeah, we do.
there. And one of our coaching clients is in Kansas, which is not in Colorado, but she does retreats in Colorado. Like, all right, we know enough people. We need to put something together
That's
in
it.
Colorado.
That's it. We're gonna do that's I'm putting it on my vision thing that we're about to do right now. It's like another retreat in Colorado. Yeah, it was great.
Something that stuck out as you were talking to, I mean, there were a couple things. One was the whole like making poor decisions or do things that don't make sense. I think there can be this concept of self-sabotage that we've mentioned before, and I mean, we didn't make that up. When you don't have a clear vision and you're missing some of this stuff, I think it can be even easier to self-sabotage. And I do identify with some of the stuff you were saying of like you have dreams and goals and things you want to do or things places you want to go or the ways you want to be used by God, whatever it is. And it can feel so far off, or sometimes just being scared that it is big and like, I don't, who am I to do that? Which is probably God, because God never called anyone to do something they could do in their own power. So it should be a clue that might be a God thing. But I do know that it sometimes it can feel so scary because it is so big, and like, who am I to do it? And sometimes we can self-sabotage because we're afraid of that. Or even just, there are some personalities more like mine that are different from you, Kristen, where I'm like, here's all the reasons this won't work. Here's all the reasons I might fail at this. And for the same reasons, that can come up and stop us from moving forward or taking steps, or keep us playing small. And even the thought of, well, if I set the target up here and I miss it, I'm going to feel really bad about myself. So maybe I'll set the target down here. And so trying to not do that and like not play small, but if this is what we really want, let's set our goal and target that. You might actually hit that. So we could probably ramble for another like half an hour,
Totally.
an hour just on
Well,
this
just echoing
subject.
off of each other. Yeah. Like even what you're saying, like what I found as you were saying it just came to mind is like, as I grow in my faith and I grow in my business and I grow as a human, like what I've recognized, there is that gap. There is that gap between like where I want to be or where I feel like God's calling me to be. Like, even if it's like, I just feel like God wants me to do this thing. And, like, I feel really passionate about it. I want to do it. But here I am, like stuck in this situation with all of these things happening. What I am learning is that's just an invitation to lean more into my trust and my faith in God. And that has been the hardest part. Like, honestly, I'm one of those people. I think you're one of those people. Like, I'll just muscle it up and figure it out on my own. Whereas, like, when it's like that, it's like, I don't even see a way. Like, I know in my bones that this is what God is calling me to do, but I have no idea how I'm going to get there or how this is even going to be possible. Like, it's such an invitation for me to trust God in that. And that's harder than muscling it up and doing all the things and failing and all the things. And so I think there's something to pay attention to there. Like, we can write all these plans down and write all these dreams and all of that. But if we're not willing to look at where we're at in our relationship with God and our faith and our trust in Him, like, our spiritual why isn't heavy enough. It isn't big enough. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's important to pay attention to, even going into this work here. Like, and like you said, it's okay to dream. It's okay to want. It's okay. Like, your kids want things all the time. Some of them are things that you give them or you allow them to have or to work towards or whatever. And some of the things you're like, you're not getting a Ferrari when you turn 16. Sorry. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, that's okay for us too. Like, for us to be like, God, I really want X, Y, and Z. And for him to say, not right now. You know what I mean? Like, you're not ready for that. Like, you're going to drive too fast and kill yourself. Like, whatever. Like, it's okay to hear a no from God too. Like, and I think as we do this work, I think it's going to, in some ways, take us back to kind of being like that child parent with God. And even just like my own inner desires as a child. Like, this is where I feel like as adults, we miss it. Like, we stop having that childlike faith. We stop having like, no is even an option faith. Like, my kids, when they were little, especially, they didn't even know no was an option. They would just ask all willy nilly and like they just didn't even know. Like, and they would ask, but it would let me have understanding into what they wanted and why they wanted it and gave me opportunities to talk with them or whatever. So, really, as we enter into some of this work, which again, I'm really excited about, but if you're not as excited as I am, I would also say, like, give yourself some space and grace to kind of move through this and keep the conversation with God open, because I do believe like He wants to show us some things through this. He wants to heal some things in us through this. Like, it's very healing when you can sit down and do some of this work, or like for me to look back and be like, "Oh my gosh, like He did it. Like He did it." Like, I am taking a second to recognize that that's healing for me in a lot of ways, and it's building my strength, my faith muscle.
Something you said there triggered another thought. So this is probably going to be like an hour and a half episode.
Just give me a 17-part episode.
You don't have to tell a child to dream. They just do it. And somewhere along the way, we start trying to fit in. Society kind of shapes and molds us a certain way. And a lot of us, I think, stop dreaming. And so part of this discussion is really to allow yourself to start dreaming again. If that's you, if you've stopped, if life has kind of beat you down, or society's tried to force you to fit inside a box, it's okay to break out of that box and start dreaming again. So really, this is an invitation into that. to start dreaming again, to awaken desire or reawaken desire and invite God into that, as you said earlier.
So before we go through this dreaming exercise that Nick's going to lead us through, I think it's important that we take a second just to pause and I just want to share some of the benefits of this work. Like I said, I've done this work before. Nick has done this work before. You may have done this work before, but I think it's a good little refresher and reminder because I feel like when we know why we're doing something, we're more likely to engage in it. So we came up with just a couple of just thoughts that we had for why doing some of this work, especially every couple of years, it can be so, so powerful. The first one is it's going to help you bring clarity and focus. And it's going to help you define what you truly want in different areas, different aspects of your business, your family, your inner life, your physical fitness, all of the things. It helps you prevent distractions by aligning decisions with that long-term goal.
Yeah, and really, how can you get to where you wanna go if you don't even know where you wanna go, right? It's that same old analogy of in order to figure out how to get to your destination, you need to know what your destination is and where you are. When you have those 2 things, then you can look at a map and figure out how to get there. So how can you even it's like going to the airport, and like, "Can I get a plane ticket?" Like, "Sure, where do you wanna go?" Like, "I don't know, where do you think I should go?" Like, you have to have a destination in mind, and this was something I wanted to mention earlier, and I forgot to. A lot of people will say, like, "Life is not a destination, it's a journey," and I believe that in some ways. It is a journey, but there are destinations along the way or checkpoints, or if it's only a journey and we never pause and stop to like take in the view of where we are, like what was the point of it all? So I think it is important to have some destinations in mind and focus on like the mini journeys to get there.
Well, and let's be for real, like even for the journey, you still have to plan accordingly. Are we going to be on the beach or are we going to be skiing in the mountains? Like, you know what I mean? Like you still have to plan for the journey itself. So yeah, no, that's really good. The next benefit is motivation and drive. It's going to help you create a clear why, and that is going to fuel your consistency and your resilience.
Yeah, and when things get hard, and they will get hard, it can help you keep moving forward. When you've got this bigger why, this vision of like, this is really what I want in life, it can help you get there. And studies show, and probably should have looked them up. I don't have it in front of me, but I can't remember the percentage, but it increases the percentage of you achieving your goals by writing. It's something like 90%. By writing it down, you're 90% more likely to actually get it. So even just having this list of what we're about to do will make it much more likely that you'll achieve what you're trying to achieve.
It's insane. This is a huge, like, I preach this so much. And studies, okay, so like, I don't know what the statistic is either. I know it's insane. Like, it's so high that you're more likely to achieve the things you write down. But I have studied myself in this way. And I can tell you with confidence that I am so much more productive and focused and clear minded. Like, I don't have as much clutter happening when I write things down. And this is a daily practice that I have incorporated into my life over the last couple of months of just sitting down at the front of the day, writing stuff out. I do my journal work. Like y'all, it works. So I'm so glad you added that in there.
I just looked it up while you were talking. 42%. So maybe the 90 comes from writing it down and having there was some this 90 is stuck in my head. So maybe it's writing down your goals and having a plan or something.
So yeah, yay for more motivation and drive. Like, isn't that something we hear all the time? Like, I just need motivation. Well, let's get started. The next thing that will definitely be a benefit in this practice is better decision making. As I was writing this out, I was like, yes, 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 yes. Like this, I can see how this work has happened in my own life. So it's going to help you filter opportunities, right? So like if it doesn't align with what we're talking about, it's a no. Like it's easier for me to say no to something. So like an example, Nick, that I gave you earlier was like, if my goal is to teach less and build a team that offers more, like in the physical, like in real life person studio, and to be more mobile so I can lead more retreats, do more of this type of work or online type stuff, then I am not going to take every opportunity to teach more classes. Right? So like it gives me a filter for my opportunities to say yes or no or how to do that. So I love that better decision making.
Yeah. For instance, when I did this exercise again that we're about to go through, there was something in there about a desire to like speak on a stage, like to to speak about, I don't know, video or marketing or something. Like, I think it'd be cool to teach from stage. And it wasn't a whole lot later. So I did this exercise before the retreat, and maybe 2 months ago, I had someone reach out and ask if I would like speak at a conference that he's putting on for laser. Like people, they buy these homemade laser tools that can like cut stuff or whatever. I don't know. He's like, "Hey, I just love your stuff. Like, would you consider speaking at our conference?" I'm like, yeah, like, and knowing that that was one of my dreams and goals, like, it aligns with what I want, so it was a yes, and having that not on my list, I mean, I probably would've said yes anyway, but how cool was it that even just having that on that list, and then it came to pass. To help guide your decisions now, you've got where you wanna go, and you've got clarity around that, and so on a high level, you have I want to get to this place. So will making this large decision, like a macro decision, will this lead me closer to where I want to go or not? And even on your daily decisions, on the micro decisions, you have a filter now to run things through. Is what I'm working on leading me towards this goal or not? And if the answer is no, like what are you doing? Like stop working on that and spend time on things that will get you closer to what you really want.
The next benefit that we wanted to share with you guys is it's going to help with adaptability and resilience. Again, one of those areas where I can see this coming to life in my own story. So even when plans change, having a vision can make it easier to pivot with purpose. You guys have heard my story, hopefully. If not, go back and catch those episodes where I talk about pivoting and what that looked like. But learning to pivot with purpose, it's also going to help keep you grounded when you're facing challenges and uncertainty. And like Nick said, like it's not if you face challenges and uncertainty, it's when. Like it's when, because that's just the way of the world. And the quicker we can just accept, acknowledge, and embrace that, the more we can learn to mold ourselves around and be grounded and be, stay rooted and get back up.
And with having a solid what, like this is what I'm trying to achieve or where I'm headed, the how you get there might change. So the way I look at this is like if you're hiking in the mountains and you know you're trying to get to this certain vantage point or waypoint, sometimes you don't just hike straight there. Sometimes you hike for a while and come to a trail and have to go a way that doesn't like, is this even going the right direction? And sometimes you might go the other way and get to a ravine and have to turn around and go back and take the other way. Like oftentimes our journey in life looks more like that, where there's a little bit of backtracking. And sometimes you got to go out of the way to get around an obstacle to then get to where you want to go. So being adaptable, being resilient, being able to go with the flow, but not lose sight of what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah, because now you have focus and clarity, right? Something my church says, I think I learned it in a training somewhere. He says, we're married to the mission, not the method. And I think that's where adaptability can really come in is like, we know what we're doing. Like, we know what our purpose is. The way we get there may change for variable reasons, right? So I love that. Another benefit of this work is growth, personal and professional growth. You guys, at the front of the year, I love hearing people's words. And I hear a lot of people saying their word for the year is growth. And I always like wince. I'm always like, oh, you're going to have a really fun year. Like, I get it. But like a lot of us, we want growth. We don't want what it takes to get that growth, right? Like some of us, even the idea of doing this work. So if you're somebody who's like, I need to grow personally, I need to grow professionally, like in my business, in my ministry, I need to grow spiritually, do more things like this. Like my guy, like you have to sit down and do this work, right? For one, it's going to push you to set ambitious but realistic goals, right? And it also is going to encourage you to be continually learning and adapting. I think we should all, you've heard me say it so many times if you've been around for a couple episodes or more, like we should always be students. We should constantly be learning and training ourselves or allowing others to train us and shape us and mold us to grow professionally, personally, spiritually, in our leadership and all of that. So this work really comes in handy if you're like, my word for the year is growth. Here you go. Here's your next step.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, unless we have something like this driving us forward, we either don't set any goals or we set things that are just really small and like easily attainable when we could have actually grown a lot more had we just been a little bit more, I'm going to say ambitious. Sometimes that gets a bad rap, but if we would have set the bar a little higher, we could have grown even more. And so helping us not stay small and play safe.
Yeah, and I think too, like growth is not done alone. Like the seed doesn't plant itself, right? Like, and the seed doesn't water itself. And so I think that's something to remember is like growth is never done by itself. Okay, so our next one is stronger leadership and influence. It's going to help you lead with vision and inspire others. You guys, even if the only place you're leading is on a yoga mat, if that's where you are a leader right now, your job is to lead with clarity, with vision, and inspire others. And that's why it's so important for us to keep that clarity and that focus and that vision for ourselves because we're just waterfalls. Like whatever's in is going to come out, right? Like it's going to flow out of us. So it also creates accountability and when you know where you're going, like when you have like if you're driving the car and you're like, we're going X, Y, and Z, here's where we're going. The way that you lead through that conversation and you navigate the car and you put in the directions is going to either make me decide to trust or not trust you. So when you know where you're going and you're like, I got this, and you're confident in that, I'm going to trust your direction, right? So for those that you're leading, when you're more focused and you're clear, like I'll even say, like, I told my team the other day, like, hey, here's where we're headed. I'm not even sure how we're going to get there yet, but this is where we're going. Like, just leading with that clarity and leading with that purpose, right, is going to help others trust your leadership, trust your direction. All right. And the last thought that we had for you of ways this could help benefit you is increasing your confidence and helping with a mindset shift. It's going to help you shift from like, I hope this happens one day to I'm actively creating this. Like, that's just it. Like, here's what I'm doing. I am going to lead 4 retreats this year. That was my very first retreat goal for a whole year. And I think I led 3, but I led 3 more than I would have led if I hadn't just said, I hope that this happens.
Yeah. And how it's a point that I wanted to make at some point in this discussion that you won't get what you want in life or you won't reach your dreams, your desires on accident. Even the things God has called you to do, it won't just happen. Sometimes people go through life just like, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. God will do it. Like, won't he do it? Most of the time, yes, with you, not for you. Well, that doesn't make sense. Let me rephrase that. Most of the
Can
time,
he do it? Yes.
he is a God of action. And when you take action, when you are working towards it, he will work with you in that. But so many stories in the Bible, like it took the Israelites taking action, doing things. God helped them. They still had to go to battle. He didn't just wipe people out and they just sat back and did nothing. Like a lot of times they had to act first, and then God met their faith and did what only God can do. But all I'd say, like, it will not just happen. It takes intentionality. So this exercise, I don't have a great name for it. I was referring to it just as like the best years of your life exercise, which sounds kind of grandiose and whatever. But what I want to do is encourage you to grab a notebook or a tablet, but something where you can pause this episode as we're going through it. So, I mean, it's okay if you want to just listen through it and come back to it, but definitely come back to it when you can sit for a little bit, pause, and work on this exercise as we go. So don't just be a passive listener. Like this one really is an active exercise that you can go through. And this is something that I led our retreaters through. Actually, I sent it to them in advance so they could come to our teacher retreat with a lot of this stuff already fleshed out. They all found a lot of value from this and talked a lot about how much they enjoyed this process. So there's definitely something special about this. And I went through it before I had them go through it. So I'm speaking from my own experience here of something I have done as well.
I have not gone through it. And the way that our retreaters talked about it, I was like, I need to do this. I was too busy writing like a low key book at the time for our retreat, but I'm excited to do it and then like go through it with them at our next retreat. I think that would be so fun.
And I got this from a mentor of mine, Graham Cochran, who actually is who helped me spark Christians do, not me, us spark Christians do yoga. I was through a mastermind of his where the idea came out, and I decided to quit my job, and then we started doing this. So
Thanks, Graham.
he wrote a book recently called Rebel: Find Yourself by Not Following the Crowd. And it's not rebel like just be a rebel for rebellion's sake, but it's really just kind of like not accepting the norm of society of just being a worker bee and suppressing your dreams and just, all this stuff we've already kind of talked about. So definitely check out that book if this stuff seems interesting to you. It's a really good book, and I'll link to that in the description, and you can buy that. And it's a good way to support our channel using any of our links that we use, because we'll get a small royalty of like, I don't know, 5 cents or something like that. It's not big, but every little bit helps. This is actually a multi-step exercise, or it's a few different exercises we're going to put together in one exercise. The first thing I want you to do is start with what he calls the dream list exercise. And what this looks like is sitting down and writing down 50 things you want to be, do, or have in your life. And 50, for some of you, 50 might be like, oh my gosh, I'll crank that out in 5 minutes. And for others, like Graham said, it took him a week to come up with 50. And it took me, I think, 3 days to finish it. Because, I'm not sitting around all day just doing this. I'd worked on it in the mornings when I had time before I started my day. But what I want you to do is sit down and just allow yourself to dream and reawaken the desire within you. And if you're needing help in some categories, think through these different categories. What do I want to be, do, or have in these categories? There's work or business, relationships or family, money, finances, health, fitness, hobbies or fun, and then like travel or experiences. So what you do is just pick that one category. Let's say in your work and business, what are some things that I want to be, do, or have? So this might look like setting revenue targets. This might look like, for example, I want to grow my video business to where I'm doing less of the work. I've developed the team to do more of the nuts and bolts day-to-day stuff so that I have more time to spend on the visionary side of things and steering the ship and being the leader. Right now I'm wearing a lot of hats. So I want to have a little bit more time freedom to do more of the things that I really feel called to do. So just to help spark some ideas, I'm going to read a little bit from the book. So for example, you might write down that you want to learn to speak Spanish, or go to Hawaii, or own a home in a specific neighborhood, or become a TEDx speaker. You might want to make enough money to hire a personal chef or fly first class. You might just desire to learn how to make crepes. Crepes? How do you say that? That French word, crepe?
Crepes.
Not creep.
But I'm a creep.
I'm classy. Nothing is too big or small. So the point is, like, if it pops in your head, just write it down, and don't judge yourself. Don't curate the thoughts. I think especially being in like the Christian space, and Graham actually is a great Christian man. It's easy sometimes to filter some of these thoughts and even feel a little selfish, or, not write some things down because you feel like maybe you shouldn't. So strike those thoughts from your head. Don't judge it, just write it down. And even if you don't know what your dreams are, you intuitively know what you want. So if you can really just kind of hone in on that, like, what do I really want? What do I want to be true in my life, for me, for my family? Maybe where you live is not really where you want to live. Maybe you really dream of being out and having acreage. Chris and I were talking about that. Both of us, we have that longing to have a little bit more space and not be in the city. And don't get hung up on like, oh my gosh, but I would give up. I like don't go there. Like, we'll get into some of that stuff later, but really just allow yourself to just dream and just put it on paper. What are some of these things I think I want? We will curate the list down the road, so don't do that yet. We don't want to do that yet.
Just while you were talking, I came up with 8. Do you want to know what one of mine was?
Yes.
A wiener dog named Gumbo. You told me not to judge myself, so I'm putting it out there for all of y'all to know that I would love to have a wiener dog named Gumbo.
Something that he wrote in the book, a line from Bob Goff, who wrote a book called Dream Big. For years, you've already been quietly curating your life without knowing it. You know what works and what doesn't, what lights you up and what burns you out, what lasts and what disappears. So again, tying back into your intuition, like really tie into those things and think like, what do I really want to be true? So here's where I want to say the first pause. Pause, allow yourself to think, to dream, and work on this list and make yourself hit 50. Okay. It might be challenging and you might be tempted to make it to 30 something. You're like, that's close enough. No, like really push yourself to hit 50. Okay. So now that you've got 50, what I want you to do is to curate that down to 10. Now that doesn't mean you're not going to do the other ones on the list, the 40 that you haven't picked. But this is really going to help focus on the 10 that are most important to you. And what I want you to do is think about why. So why do you want this? So look back through this list of 50 and say to yourself, if I could only have 10 of these, which ones would they be? And then why? So I'm going to read this section from the book because it helps explain why we're doing this. So next to each desire or below, write down why you want to do, be, or have that thing. This is not about justifying your desires to you, to anyone else, to the world. It also is not about moralizing your desires either. Lord knows we have enough people judging everyone else's desires because it's not something they personally desire. No, this is a powerful final step to better understand your desires. Articulating that you want something is powerful, and understanding why you want that thing is transformative. Even if the why is simple and obvious, it helps you create more self awareness. And knowing yourself better is the first step to recreating your life to be more fulfilling and aligned with your internal makeup or like who God has called you to be. So now I want you to pause and actually do that. Pick your 10 and write why. Like, why do you really want that thing? So I'm going to keep reading a little bit from the book because I really feel like it helps, again, spell out the why. Like, why is this important? So, congratulations. You've now done deeper self work than 99% of the world's population. And this list, while it's not perfect, is an accurate reflection of who you are, how you were designed, and what you value in life. Now, of course, this list can and likely will change over time. But right now, this is a true snapshot of what makes you, you. And so I want to ask you, what surprised you about this list? Is there anything that showed up in the top 50 or even the top 10 that you've never really before fully articulated or voiced or even like thought of? Like, was there something that popped up that you're like, wow, where did that come from? I hadn't really given it much thought. Many of us have become so good at suppressing our desires that we aren't even aware of certain core wants that have been lingering under the surface for years. And also, what did not surprise you about the list? Are there things that popped up that you just know have always been a deep desire or a dream, whether big or small? How does it feel to see it written down in front of you in black and white? Does it excite you? Does it make you nervous or scared? All these emotions are natural and it's part of the process. But it's amazing what can happen when you actually document it and get it down in front of you and just especially answering that why question to bring a little bit more clarity. So now if you haven't already done the 10, again, pause, knock out that 10. The next section is what Graham calls the best 3 years exercise. And he got this from a coach that he had, Rich Litvin. And what's really incredible about this is 3 years is enough time to actually make significant progress toward a goal or even accomplish it, but not so long into the future that it feels like out of reach. So a lot of times you'll hear people say like 5 year, what are your 5 year goals? What are your 10-year goals? The most successful people think in decades, not years. And like, I'm sorry. I guess I'm not one of those people. If it's too far out into the future, it's too easy to put off. But conversely, we often overestimate what we can do in a year. So if you look at in the past, like, is that true for you? And when you have done goals, maybe you're a goals person and you do this every year, maybe you're not because you're like me, you've done it and then like didn't really look at it again later. Goals is an area I'm always trying to how do I make it more realistic and actually something I stick with? And this is an area that has really helped me is looking at this 3 year. Because in 1 year, especially when we're feeling all gung ho and energized and new year, new me, all that jazz, it can be really easy to be like, oh, this year it's going to be different. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this happen and I'm going to build this. And then it just doesn't happen because we overestimate what we think we can get done. and often we'll bite off more than we can chew. So this 3 years is a really good sweet spot of it's not so far out in the future that I'll just keep pushing it off, but it's enough time that I can actually make significant progress toward the things that I'm trying to do. So make sure you give yourself at least like 20 minutes to do this exercise. Don't like breeze through it, but don't linger too long on it as well. And so again, like the others, once I get through explaining this section, I want you to pause it, work on it, and then come back. If we were to meet in 3 years from now, so for example, let's say we bump into each other at a coffee shop or the airport or at a conference or maybe a retreat of ours, whatever. And I ask you, how's it been? What have you been up to? Oh my gosh, Nick, this has been the best 3 years of my life. Why? Like, what would you say? What would you be telling me about? What has happened in the last 3 years of your life that you would be so excited to tell me about? And just brain dump everything that comes to mind. This doesn't necessarily have to be from your 50 list, although it likely will contain some of those. Hopefully, even in the top 10, some of these things will probably pop up. So, what happened to me was I actually had a couple other things surface, especially when I didn't filter it or think through. Like, I didn't look at my 50 and look at my 10 and then try to answer this. I just started writing. So again, just picture you just ran into me. Like, what would you say? Oh my gosh, like in the last 3 years, this is what happened in my business and this is what happened here. And my gosh, like I've had such a great time with my kids because I blah, 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 blah. So like just brain dump whatever comes out and write for as long as stuff comes out. Now, if you get stuck, if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know, then consider reflecting on those 6 core areas of life that I mentioned earlier, which were work or career, relationships, family, money or finances, health and fitness, hobbies and fun, travel and experiences. Like what just happened in the last 3 years that you would tell me, you'd be so excited to tell me about. Make sure you don't hold back. Again, don't filter this and be as specific as possible. Don't just say like, oh my gosh, I built the business of my dreams. Like, what is that? That's really what we're trying to get to. Like, what is the business of your dreams? What is the life of your dreams? You might start out with some broad stroke highlights of why these past 3 years or future years have been the best, but go deeper. Like, explain the specifics. 10 people doing this exercise might have said that they found the love of their life as one thing that's been great. But the nuances of that relationship and why it's so great will be vastly different for all 10 people. So the goal is just to be honest and deeply personal. There are a few reasons why this exercise is so powerful. It gets you to project only 3 years into the future. So again, it's not so far that you have absolutely no clue what will be happening. Like I could tell you today where I think I'll be in the next 3 years. For me, that changes in the 5 to 10. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be in the same house. I don't know if I'll even be in this city or state. Like, I just don't know. And like 10 years, like we will be very different in 10 years. But 3 years, like it's just enough that I can really give you some realistic and honest clarity around where I think I'm going to be in 3 years. And this also gets you to think in terms of past tense. So instead of peering into the future and hoping or wishing your life could be different, like we mentioned earlier, you're doing some basic visualizations and then articulating things as if they've already happened. So you're basically experiencing them and allow yourself to experience it. Like when you think about this, or really visualize yourself in those things that you've actually had or done or who you are, who you've become, and allow yourself to like really visualize what that feels like to be that or do that or have that. And this is completely open-ended. So instead of asking a leading question like, how much money do you want to be making? Or what weight do you want to be? Or how much do you want to weigh? This exercise allows you to define what would make these next 3 years the best years of your life. And this is different for everybody, but it allows your subconscious to speak up and draw attention to what truly makes you happy or fulfilled, as opposed to what you think would make you happy or fulfilled. So in this, Graham goes on to say, like a lot of times with his coaching clients, they tend to want to make money. They come to him for business things. So can you help me make more money in the business? But oftentimes people, when they go through this exercise and it's more open-ended, a lot of times what comes to mind has absolutely nothing to do with finances. And I think a lot of times that's true for a lot of us. We do want to make more money, but it's not just for money's sake. It's because that will allow us or enable us to be, do, or have some of these bigger things that we want in life. So pause, do that. The final part of this exercise is to work through what your ideal day will look like. Because none of this really matters. Nothing will actually change if this doesn't impact your day to day life. Because it's the little decisions you make every day, the things you do or don't do, the things you say yes to or no to, that will shape the rest of your life and will determine if you get anywhere near the goals that you're aiming for. So, again, I'm going to read a little snippet from the book to help talk us through this next section. So, next, for this part of the exercise, I want you to just pick one thing just for the sake of the exercise, either from your list, your 50, your top 10, or if something else came up in your 3-year exercise. Let's just pick one to focus on, because in real life, like we can't take those 10 things and design our day to reach all 10 things in the next 3 years. Like realistically, we're probably going to focus on just a couple of the big ones and work towards that. And I don't know, as you look through your list, maybe you're like me, there actually are some things that are kind of linked or similar, that if I achieve this one thing, then the other things will kind of fall in line once I hit that. So just pick one that stands out to you. Doesn't really matter. But what I want you to do now is get super detailed on that specific dream or thing that you want to be, do, or have, and spend some time journaling some answers to these questions. One, what does your ideal day look like after this dream has come true? So, not what does it look like now to achieve it. Once you've hit that dream, what does your ideal day look like? Like, what are you doing? What are you spending your time on? Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead. That's the next question. What do you spend your time doing? Who are you spending your time with? And how do you feel as you lay your head back down on your pillow after your ideal day? Maybe just pause and close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and begin to visualize that ideal day. It's not like, oh, I'm going to wake up and do this specific thing every single day, but just in general, what would your day look like? And as many specifics as you can come up with. So I would love it. Like I would wake up at this time and this is what I would be doing. And then at this time, this is what I would be doing. And I would have the afternoon to spend time with so and so, just whatever that is. So this next section from the book I find is helpful. Every dream is created twice. Do you see what we did there? We took one simple dream and we broke it down into like a daily blueprint that we would actually enjoy. So, like, what would our life actually look like once we got there? We got specific and envisioned the day as if it were a reality. So, whatever that goal for what the one in the book he uses as an example was, you are now in the best shape of your life. And I didn't go into all the details of what that might look like. But once we've envisioned, I'm already in the best shape of my life, what would my day look like? It would look different than it does today. And that's kind of the point. Like we start to see the differences of what does my day look like today and what will it look like once I've achieved that goal. It would have to look different. Like it's not magic. It's just that once we achieve that goal, likely we did certain things to achieve that goal. And that's what brought about the change. And that's part of what we're trying to highlight is, what do I really need to be doing now to now achieve the things that I really want to have? Back to the book. As Robin Sharma famously said in his book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that sounds interesting. I've never read that. Everything is created twice, first in the mind and then in reality. If you want to create the life of your dreams, it must first be created in your mind. So we've already begun that process, but there are some barriers that lie in the way of your dream life being created in reality. So a next step, and we're not going to go there in this episode, is to start to identify some limiting beliefs, thoughts, and patterns that are holding you back. And think of this as like we need to do some demo work, like demolition work, to now renovate your home and create the home of your dreams. Like you might even need to take it down to the studs. It kind of depends on like how close is your house now to your dream house, how much demo work is going to be needed. But that's essentially what we need to do is get rid of some of this old junky stuff that's in the way in order to have that clean slate to really create what we want to create. So if you haven't, pause, do your ideal day, and then pick back up when you're done. So I just want to close the exercise with this final thought, which kind of reiterates what we had said earlier. This comes from Alice in Wonderland. So Alice, and I don't even remember the movie, but I've heard this quote a lot, and it makes sense. Alice says, "Which road should I take?" And the cat says, "Where are you going?" Alice says, "I don't know." So the cat says, "Then it doesn't matter which road you take." So coming all back to that, we got to know where you want to go in order to figure out what road you need to take. And let's get you on the right road.
Man, like that was I got 36 just while you were talking. So, like, I didn't get to the working through my ideal day and things like that. But even as I'm walking through some of my lists, like even for 3 years from now, like I wrote down the question was, what would I want to catch an old friend up with, like on how the last 3 years have been? But I wrote down, like, where will I be in 3 years? I'll be 43. I'll have a kid in college and my other one will be driving. And then my littlest will be a teenager. So, like, that's a whole nother season of life. Like for me just to stop, pause, and think in 3 years, like different season of life. But then when I look at my list and like what I put on there, I'm like, this tracks. Like some of the things that I want to do now, like have a garden and chickens, I would not have wanted to do 5 years ago. So that wouldn't have been on my list 5 years ago because I had a bunch of little kids running around, not driving and going to college. Right. So like I look at like how the two, like, like what would I look like? What would I show up to this coffee shop? What am I doing there? Am I going to just get coffee with a friend? Or like I had to really like let myself, and I did all this while you were talking. So I'm really excited to actually sit down with a cup of coffee or coffee like substance and like do this. But I think even just letting it like play in my mind. So at the time of this recording, by the grace of God, in the next couple of weeks, I will be moving to what I would consider the house off of my last 3-year blueprint that I wrote down. And it was actually a little bit longer than 3 years ago. It was like the 5-year situation. It's happening. Like it's happening real time right now. So let me give you an example of as I am packing up my stuff and I'm kind of thinking like, what am I going to take? What am I going to throw away? What am I going to sell? Right? Like we're not taking a lot of furniture with us because of the way the house is designed. That furniture will no longer fit in that house. So I'm going to get rid of that furniture and I don't have to take it to the new house with me. And then I'm like going through the house and I'm like, where am I going to put this item? Like we have a big grandfather clock. I'm like, where is this going to fit? Or like my plants, like all of my plants, like, ooh, this would look really great on that window. And there's a window by the sink, which I love. And I cannot wait to fill it up with herbs. Like I'm allowing myself to live in this house before I've even gotten the key to the house. Right. And there is still a possibility. Like the reason I'm sharing this is that like, y'all know how house selling can go. You can get right on up to closing day and something falls through. Right. Like, so there's still the key is not in my hand, but I am allowing myself. And there is this tension, like I'm not going to lie, where it's like, where am I going to put my plants? What color am I going to paint my walls? Like I have an idea and a Pinterest board of how I want my room to look and the bathroom and the things like I'm allowing myself to move into that space mentally before I ever own it physically. And as I was doing this work, I was like, this is exactly what we're doing, right? Like this is exactly what I'm doing is I'm imagining myself living there, moving through the house and thinking, will the grandfather clock be in the way here? Or, will the plants look okay over there? Or what am I going to put on this wall? Cause it's like really blank or whatever. It's kind of the same idea. And I want to acknowledge and address how both feelings can be real. Like I am excited and I'm having to rearrange some things that right. Remember we talked about like helps you make better decisions. I'm deciding what stays, what goes, what we're selling, all of that. Like my decisions are based around what's going to be available when we move in. And it's a little bit scary. Like there's like for me, I'm like, what if I do all of these things and I get really excited and this is my dream house and I'm telling people now and I'm imagining my life there and it doesn't happen. Or I'm thinking about how overwhelmed I'm going to be in the next 2 weeks, like just realistically. And I'm not like self prophesying, like it's really overwhelming to move and own businesses and try to do this, all the things like how realistically I know the work it's going to take to get there. Right. Like it's not just going to happen. Like I have to do the work to pack up, to move, to continue working or to delegate out my work for the next couple of weeks until I get settled. That anxiety or just that restlessness or that tension is there. And I kind of just want to address that because it's something I'm experiencing real time in my own life, like outside of this podcast and outside of work and all of that. Like both are true. I'm very excited and I'm already imagining myself and my family and my life there. And 5 years from now, I hope some of you come out there, because my goal eventually is to be a space where people can retreat. And I'd love to lead retreats and things like that out there this time in 5 years, right? In 5 years, I will have no kids. Well, I'll have one that's still home but be driving. So like that's, once they hit that point, it's kind of like, yeah. But it's like I will be in a whole different situation, and I'm allowing myself to feel the excitement of that and feel the work and the action that is called. Like Nick said, like God delivered the people from Egypt, but the people had to fight. They had to step, they had to go. Like they had to leave. Like they didn't have to leave, but like if they want to be free, they have to leave. And that cost us, right? Like that cost us energy and effort and mental anxiety, all of the things. So I think I just wanted to share that, and then also just address just both feelings can live in the same space. Like you can be feeling both of those things. Like I am so afraid of even dreaming this or thinking this, because what if it doesn't happen? Right. But what if you don't do anything? Like, can we be scared of that what if too? Like, if we're going to be scared of the what ifs, can we be scared of the what if that, like we're not going to do anything? Like,
Nothing
that's the what
changes.
if. Yeah, but nothing changes. Like, right. That scares me more than the idea of trying and it not happening, or hoping or praying and it not happening. So I just wanted to encourage some people, as you do this work, give yourself some time and space. Like, hey, if you've been looking to do a 24-hour self retreat, now is the time. This is your sign. Tell your spouse, hey, I'm taking a night off. I'm gonna go do, and go, like, let yourself be somewhere you can really because I am sitting in a place where I'm now transitioning into like the last of this work that I did years ago. And it's time to kind of look forward and dream about what's next. And like, it's a weird place to be, because when I first did this, I was so buried and dead on the inside that I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want. But just now, like while Nick was talking, while we were recording this, not even like being like full focused outside in the sunshine with my wind chimes, like, where I'd want to be quiet and do this, I got 36. I came up with 36 out of 50. And some of them did surprise me. I was like, do I really want to write a book? Like I was surprised when I wrote that down. Like, who am I writing a book to and for? And what's it going to look like? And I like, those like started this whole other, so it was cool to kind of go through that, and I can't wait to finish it. And I can't wait to go through it, like the pick 10 and then the 3 years from now, and then my ideal day, because my ideal day in 3 years, or even now, like moving into a different season, is going to be different than it is right now. But if y'all don't do any of the other ones, like if you don't do any of this, just do the ideal day. Like let yourself wake up and go to bed and walk yourself through, what are you wearing? Who are you talking to? What are you eating? What are you like? It is so wonderful. And I've done that multiple times before now. And I would say, for the most part, I would say like 90% of my days are my ideal day. And they're not perfect. No, none of it's going to be perfect, but I am thankful for it. So, and I've worked really hard to do the work and to make the space and say no and trust God in the spaces in between, because, to stay anchored to that, I really had to stay anchored to him.
One final encouragement I want to give people too is that you can allow yourself to desire silly things. Like I actually, even before we knew we were going to film this today, because we didn't, we were like, what should we make an episode on today?
We had something else in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we pivoted. I think it was this morning. If not this morning, it was like last night. But there was something I was just kind of praying about, and then I felt this weird thing like, God, this doesn't really matter. Like this is kind of silly, and I feel weird praying about it because there's much more important things going on in the world. Like to me, it's not hard to come to God for more important things. But when it's something that's like, this kind of feels silly, like this thing, a thing that I want or experience that I want, or, something that just doesn't seem that important, I have a harder time asking God for those things. And they remind me of the scripture in Matthew 7, 9 to 11. And I'll read from the New Living Translation. You parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, do you give them a stone instead? Or if they ask for a fish, do you give them a snake? Of course not. So if you sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask him? So again, it's not all about things. It's not about getting things, but there might be some things like I'd love, like the garden is a great example. I'd love to have a garden and like God cares about what you care about. Like, so much of our relationship with our kids, I feel like having kids is such an important part of God's plan for our lives to help us grow and mature. And it really can shine a light into God's heart for us. That, like, if your kids are into something and to you, like, it's not a big deal, like, you still care about it, and because you care about them. It's something that's important to them, like, can be important to you just because you want what's best for them. And God's up there, I think, similarly, right? Like, yeah, there are big things going on in life, but he wants you to live a fulfilled life too. And there was a quote I was going to share when we first started, and it's this. It comes from a guy named Saint Irenaeus. I'm not sure how to say that. He was a second century theologian. He has this quote that's used quite a bit called, "The glory of God is man fully alive." You got to think about that, ponder it. Like, what could that really mean? Part of that, what I think means is, if we're running around as Christians and we're defeated, we're playing small. Like, if people see us and they're not inspired in some way, like, man, I want what they have. We're not doing God service that way, right? Like, we're not sharing the glory of God. We're not sharing the story of Jesus. We're not sharing the gospel. If we're walking around, woe is me, I don't think that shares the glory of God. I think when we're really living into his purpose for our lives, and when we're really alive, that the glory of God is shining through us onto others through that.
Yeah, my favorite, I would call it like my life quote. If you've ever done a retreat or even just a couple of classes with me, you've probably heard it. It's by Marianne Williamson, and she talks about that, about how we're all called to make manifest the glory of God within us. And when we are playing small and we are playing safe, we are not doing that. And I love that she says, when you are liberated from your fears, you automatically liberate others. And I just love that. Like, and I just think about, like, you talked about the parent child relationship. The more I parent, the more I realize, like, I've got so much of my view of God wrong. Like, I think of God the dictator, and God the creator, God the artist, but like, I rarely think of him as God the father, right? Like, and I know a lot of that is tied to our own personal relationships with our fathers here, but like, I just have moments like that, like you said, like, where it's like, this seems so silly. But as you were talking, I was thinking about when my kids, now that they're at an age, they're 10, 13, and she's about to be 16. So like, they're older now, so they understand more. And they'll say, "Hey mom, I know you're really like stressed out and you've been really busy today and you're probably really tired, but we'd really like to go to the store to get this." And there are days where I'm like, "Facts, we'll do it tomorrow." But then there are also those times where I'm like, they're kids and like their needs and desires matter too. Of course, I want to take them to the park. Of course, I want to go. Like my middle one, he'll come to me and say, "Do you want to go for a bike ride?" And like, or he'll say the same things like, "I know you're really busy and I know you're really tired and you've had a really big week or you just got back from retreat, but would you like to go for a bike ride?" Like, you can see him like weighing the scales of, is this too small? Is my desire too small to come to my mom and ask her to do something with me or for me? And it really kind of repostures my own heart. And I come back to my why and my desires to be a mom first, but not just a mom, right? Like, and be a mom first in this season and be present and be available to them. And so I love this work. And even when I wrote down, in the name of Jesus, I'm going to get a wiener dog named Gumbo. And like, it seems so silly, but like, it's one of those, "Hey God, I know you're busy, like trying to manage like world politics and stuff, but like, I'd really like a dog named Gumbo." Like, that seems so silly, but like, I think that's when God is the biggest in the smallest little things like that. If we will kind of put it out there, put it in front of him, or whatever, when he meets that desire or that happens, it comes to fruition, it makes God bigger to me. Does that make sense? Like, it's like the grandioso things, it's like only God can do it, right? But like, when this little like girl desire in my heart gets met, I'm like, that makes God that much bigger to me. So when I look at this, I mean, yeah, there's definitely like some questions and like, how would I do this? Like, I don't know. And some fears and things like that. Like, but for me, it kind of is an open invitation to allow God into those deeper places for me and to see like, what can he do? Like, what can he do with what I have? Here's where I'm at. This is the season I'm in. These are the skills I've acquired. This is my natural strength and gift. Like, what can you do with that? And also just that little like reminder, that hand on the shoulder that, hey, it's okay to want a garden that doesn't help anybody else but your family. It's okay to want a dog named Gumbo. Like, it's okay to want these things too, because I care so much for you that I don't just want your needs met. I also want to give you the desires of your heart. And that is healing for me. Even to say it out loud right now feels almost overwhelming. Like, that feels healing to me. So I really want to encourage you guys to do this work. And if you are feeling compelled or brave enough, whatever the word is, I would love for you to reach out to us and tell us your experience. Like, how was this for you? Was it scary? Was it sad? Was it exciting? Was it confusing? Like, just tell us your experience and if you've done work like this before and how that's played out in your life. So this is one of those episodes we always tell you guys, like, email us, tell us hi, tell us where you're listening in from. Like, I mean it like in this way, like, I want to have an actual conversation with you. Like, tell me how this was for you. And I just want to encourage you guys to do it. Like, if it takes you 2 weeks to do it in 2 weeks, right? Like, you don't have to do it in this one episode or this one setting. So, Nick, thank you.
You got 2 weeks until the next episode comes out, so that's fine.
There you go. There you go. I appreciate you leading us through this. And like I said, when you brought it to our retreaters last fall, like, I just remember hearing them talk about how awesome it was, but I hadn't personally gone through it. But even just what I did get done while you were talking, like, I'm excited to finish it and to see some of this come to life and to see God through it in the middle of all of it. So I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful for Graham and Graham, right?
Yeah.
Not Grant.
Graham.
Okay. Yeah. And the way that he has influenced you and the ways that you have taken action and how that's led us to like this moment, like, we can go back and we have gone back and told our origin story of like a girl out in the middle of nowhere with no address and we didn't have internet. We didn't have a TV. We didn't have anything. We had cows, a whole lot of cows in the middle of nowhere where we knew anybody. And that's where CDY was born. Like, I remember where I was sitting out on a dock at like 10 o'clock at night. You had just gotten off one of your calls and you're like, what do you think about this? And like, that was it. That was where it was born. And it's like, to go back and to see where we're at now is really powerful. And I think that's the power in sharing our stories. And so that's why we want to hear from you.
Yeah, there's my final thoughts. One, really focus on that ideal day and start actually putting some pen to paper. Like, all right, so now even if it's just, okay, that one goal, this is what I would do. Try to figure out for now, what do I really want my days to look like? What the person that has that thing, what do they do? And allow that to shape how you spend your time today. The things you do daily is what compounds over time to get you to where you want to go. And if you're not changing what you're doing today, you will not get there. And then also periodically check back in. So this is where I have fallen off the wagon and need to jump back on, is I need to pull this list back up. I would say at least once a week, maybe the beginning of the week, as a reminder. All right, where am I trying to go? Where am I headed? And let's make sure that I spend some time during this week on activities that will get me there. And it's not like everything you can do all day, every day, all of that is stuff on that list. Like, we all have random errands to run and things that come up. And, I just have editing work that's not at all tied to that. Well, I guess it kind of is, but to make sure that you're at least coming back to that list periodically to make sure that you're headed in that direction, and that the way that you spend your time is going to lead you there. So friend, I hope you found that helpful. If you did, if you're watching this on YouTube, can you hit that like button? That really helps us. Also, share this with someone. If you have some other teacher people, or even like, this is not even at all related to yoga, like, you could share this with anybody who wants to do anything with their life. Like, share this with them. It might help change their life. Well, again, I hope you did find that helpful, and we will see you on the next one.